Good day to the New Jersey Black Issues Convention audience. My name is John Smith. I will be your moderator for this very distinguished panel that we've assembled for you today. And welcome to our annual legislative day that we hold each year to inform the listening audience and the residents of the state of New Jersey of the uh, important things that are happening in reference to legislation uh, in the state of New Jersey. Today, we're going to be talking about legislation that affect everyone in our society, and that's the criminal justice system. Um, we have some experts to talk about things that are happening currently in the criminal justice system. We'll tell you things that you should know about our criminal justice system. And as we all know, that there are three components of the criminal justice system, and the panelists are familiar with all three of those components, and they would talk about, and I will be asking questions in reference to those components. Again, this is an annual legislative day that we do each year. I am disappointed this year that it has to be virtual because we like to be able to see each other, look each other in the eye, look at each other in the face. And we usually do it at Thomas Edison State College in Trenton, but because of the pandemic, this year we are doing it virtual. But next year, be assured that we know that the pandemic will be gone and we'll be back at a location somewhere in the state of New Jersey, face to face. I have three expert panelists with me this afternoon. The first person that is going to present would be Assemblywoman Verena Reynolds Jackson from the 15th District in the state of New Jersey, a member, I hope, of the Legislative Black Caucus, and is doing great things for our state's capital. And she's going to start her presentation by talking about legislation that's in place right now to alleviate inadequate policing in the state of New Jersey, and those things that are being recommended legislatively to decrease police brutality in the Black community and mass incarceration. Yarnick Wood from the New Jersey Institute of Social Justice, headquartered in the great city of Newark on Park Place, is an attorney, an experienced practice attorney who knows the law, who will talk about those things in reference to what is happening in reference to reforming our law enforcement agencies in the state of New Jersey so that we won't be victims of police abuse and neglect and those things. Giles Shipp, former president of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executive. I've known Giles Shipp for a number of years. Giles started as an Edison police officer, went on to be a supervisor in the Office of the State Attorney General. As a matter of fact, he was so great in doing his job as a police officer where he's from in the city of Edison. He now has a son who is a supervisor in the Edison Police Department. So, you know, Giles is also a member of the Police Training Commission here in the state of New Jersey, who knows what police officers are supposed to do in reference to adhering to standards and also following the Attorney General guidelines. So if we could start with you, Assemblywoman, to tell us a little bit about yourself and anything else that you would like us to know. And thank you for being here today.
Absolutely. I don't count how many of the NJBIC conventions days that I've been to now, and I agree with you. I miss seeing the sea of faces, young and youth, out in the audience. So we have to, pivot and do the best we can through this virtual space. But I am Assemblywoman Verlina Reynolds Jackson. I represent the 15th Legislative District, which includes the capital city of Trenton, Ewing, Lawrence, Hopewell Borough, Hopewell Township, Pennington, East Amwell, West Amwell, Lambertville, West Windsor, and I hope I didn't leave anybody out. And then the rest of the state, right? Because the legislation that we pass doesn't just impact my district, it impacts statewide. So I represent you all no matter where you live. I just wanted to give a little bit about who I am and my journey here. And I come from local government. I served on Trenton City Council for almost 7.5 years. But even prior to that, I got involved because I was interested in making sure that our residents had good voices to advocate for them. And so when I went to my local reps and I was dismissed, I wrote letters. And, at the time I was a college grad, I had a master's degree, I worked in social services, I was that resource person. So if I'm the one that's calling around and I'm hitting barriers and roadblocks, and it's taking me weeks and months and sometimes years to get resolved, it's even going to be even more difficult for those who don't know who to call. So, part of my passion is making sure that I advocate for each and every one of you, whether it's youth, to our seniors, to our college students, for our immigrants, our refugees, anyone undocumented. If you are here in the state of New Jersey, there is a place for you here, and it is very, very important that I advocate for those rights. It's very important to me also, just to be transparent. I have 9 nephews. I have a nephew that went to jail at the age of 16 for gun possession around folks that he shouldn't have been with. And so, we are a family that we try to instill into our children, the things to do, things not to do. But for whatever reason, he chose this path. So he was a part of that 5-year mandatory sentence. He is now out and he is doing very well, but it was those life lessons that we all go through. And so when we start to talk about mass incarceration, we talk about police reform, when we begin to talk about all these things, I think for him, if he was a different color, he probably would have got a slap on the wrist and sit home, instead of doing 5 years at the age of 16 and now trying to figure out where do I go from here in my life, and what do I do with this criminal conviction now. But the good news is, when he got out, we passed legislation not too long ago for people that are on parole and probation, to be able to restore their voting rights. And so this is huge for us when we're talking about restoring our people when they come out. Some people call it the first right, reentry, whatever you want to call it. They are whole and they should be able to participate. And so it was, for me, I think New Jersey has done a good job. We have an app out now. So when he texts me, I text him back and say, here, you need to register, make sure you're registered to vote no matter where you are, because, the things that happen, it happens because because of people like you. No matter what your concern is, if it's about equal pay, if it's about housing, if it's about college debt, if it's about the youth, the over sentencing of our youth, the mass incarceration that we have, we need your voices in there. We need you to make sure that you vote people in that represent your interests and vote people out that don't. We have to make sure that we hold everybody accountable. So that's just a small piece. I know you're going to come back with a few more questions, but I want to leave some room for my colleagues here. I see Mr. Wood on the side here shaking his head in agreement. And so I feel like, I know mostly everyone on the call My brother, Mr. Ship, is also been with me through my council days. He is a true partner right now with me in the legislature, making sure that I have the law enforcement side as well as the advocate side when we start to make these decisions about laws that need to be heard. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity and the invite to be with you today.
And thank you. Before I go to Veronique, I would just like to for you to give some information in reference to. We know that the persons who get involved with the criminal justice system start with the law enforcement component, uh, and I know that as a state legislator, you supply funds and resources to the municipalities, in the state of New Jersey. What, when you, I don't know, I mean, I'm quite sure that you being, a Trenton person, meet with, on some level with the municipal government in the city of Trenton and the other municipalities that you represent in your district. What do you tell those persons who are in charge of public safety for their municipalities in reference to how their law enforcement persons are supposed to be fair and equal to everyone that they come in contact with? Do you
You
get
know,
involved on that level with those municipal government persons?
Absolutely. I have a great relationship with most of our public safety chiefs or directors, especially here in the city of Trenton. We have a great communication. But there was a bill that was passed, A 3641, which required departments of public law and public safety to incorporate implicit bias in and cultural diversity training materials for law enforcement officers. It made it mandatory for cultural diversity and implicit bias training for law enforcement. And it became a law for New Jersey. And I think it's important because when you talk about, some of the cultural things that we experience in Black and Brown communities, we're fearful when a police officer pulls us over. It's not always safe. And we've seen recent footage of someone, being confronted by law enforcement, said, hey, I don't feel safe here. And he went to a convenience store, and things still went wrong. So I think there is space that we need to be able to train and talk about and really recognize. And I think where we are with George Floyd ripping the veil off of that really is helping law enforcement understand and people, because you think about back to Kaepernick when he took the knee. This is everything that he was talking about then, and saying, listen, this violence against Black men is just brutal, and it's murderous. And so, we're saying this, we have video now. So thank God for technology to be able to call this out. We've had testimonies, we've had people go to court, and still, we didn't get any resolve. But now, when you have it on video and it's undisputed about the murders that have been happening, you have to say, what do we do about the culture inside our institutions? And so we have that bill. We have some other things that are coming down the pike. But I think it has to start with recognizing that there is a cultural difference, and we do have to address them. And so it begins with us making this assertion to them. And so I go back to those that are in leadership and being brave and bold and having these conversations with the leadership, so that they can get down to the patrol. I mean, culture starts at the top. It starts in the training. And so these are just a few tools that we're using to try to shift and to make everyone an equal part of New Jersey.
Thank you very much. We know, and the other two panelists are very familiar with rules and regulations and policies. We know that, when you become a law enforcement person, especially for police officers, you get a rules and regulations manual. It's several hundred pages thick, so we have rules and regulations on the books already that if they were just enforced, I think that things would be much better for the Black community. and we will come back to you later, Assemblywoman. But and then and on top of that, those rules and regulations that are formulated by your particular law enforcement department, then you have the Attorney General guidelines that Brother Ship is very familiar with, being a supervisor there. So I think that Black people in our municipalities and especially in our urban areas are concerned about uh, holding those persons accountable. We know that we have laws on the books. We have the Constitution. We have the first. We have the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. We have all those things. We're just concerned. The people that I talk to are concerned about, John, who's holding those persons responsible for making sure that law enforcement officers adhere to those things that are already in place. And with that, let's go to Brother Wood to talk about what is specifically being done at the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice in reference to reformation when it comes to law enforcement.
Okay. I guess first I'll just introduce myself. I'm Yannick Wood. I'm the Director of Criminal Justice Reform at the New Jersey Institute of Social Justice. I have a law enforcement background. Before working as a Director of Criminal Justice Reform, I was a prosecutor in New York City. I have a few different perspectives on this topic, but I'm very, very happy to NJBIC, Mr. Smith, and Assemblywoman Reynolds-Jackson, Mr. Shipp, for taking the time today to talk about these very, very important issues. In my capacity at the New Jersey Institute of Social Justice, we are advocating for the passage of a lot of bills right now to reform this criminal justice system that we have here. But before I get into some of those efforts, I just want to, I guess, almost expand the conversation just a little bit, because policing and prosecution is just one or two elements of the criminal of public safety. There's also the community that's involved, and I think that the future is that we need to find a way for the community to be more involved in public safety and to lessen the footprint of policing and lessen the footprint of prosecution where it's possible, so that way we could ourselves keep our communities safe. So in the context of this conversation with policing reform, there's a lot of legislation right now. For example, there's a chokehold ban bill that's A4284 and S2617. I just want to lift that bill up right now. We kind of saw with the George Floyd murder, how cruel and how inhumane chokeholds could be. The more that somebody is choked, the more they have to struggle to breathe. The more they struggle to breathe, the more they get choked. It's draconian, it's outdated, and it needs to be banned. Officers have lots of tools that they can use. They have different types of tactics. They have partners. They have equipment, but they do not need to use chokeholds. So that's something that we're lifting up right now. And also the Civilian Complaint Review Bill, Review Board bill right now. That's A4656 S2963. I just want to bring that to everyone's attention. This is a body of members from the community that, that's a CCRB is a body of members from the community that will investigate cases of alleged police misconduct. So jurisdictions, counties, municipalities, they all need to have these CCRBs, and the CCRBs need to have the ability to subpoena records, subpoena witnesses, law enforcement witnesses, to get to the bottom of it, and they need to be able to do that immediately. Because as a former prosecutor, I can tell you, cases don't get better with time. As time passes, memories fade, so we need these investigations as soon as possible. Another bill I just want to lift up is transparency, the police transparency bill. We saw this with the George Floyd case. I'm not sure if everyone's aware of this, but the person who murdered George Floyd, Derek Chauvin, was accused of choking people in 2 separate incidents before. I didn't know that before the case, and if these records were made publicly available, police disciplinary records or misconduct records or those types of records are made publicly available to members of the community, then police officers can be held accountable. You know, it sounds kind of absurd, but if you wanted the disciplinary records of your barber in New Jersey, you can get that, but you cannot get it for the person who has been deputized, has a firearm, who can inflict a lot more harm or good in the community. So that's something that really needs to be, we need to look into that. We need to talk to our legislators and ask them to pass this. Qualified immunity, it's a big topic, and basically qualified immunity, officers, if somebody is making allegations of an officer violating their civil rights, they have to clear this hurdle, and it's a judge-made hurdle of qualified immunity. And this hurdle prevents a lot of people from going forward with these lawsuits. So we really want to make police officers accountable for their actions, and qualified immunity prevents that from happening. So you know, we're encouraged that there's a lot of conversation about it, and we're looking forward to a passage of that. And then I just want to lift up one last thing. The New Jersey Institute of Social Justice has really supported, it's the Youth Justice pilot bill. It's a Transformation and Restorative Justice pilot bill. And this is a bill that's going to create hubs around Trenton, Newark, Camden, and there's one other, Camden, Newark, Trenton, and Patterson. Yes, so 4 hubs. And at these hubs, there's going to be mental health services, programs that are going to divert kids away from entering the criminal justice system. And people who have already been caught up in the criminal justice system, they're going to be able to receive services for when they're re-entering the community. And right now in New Jersey, we spend about $445,000 per child to incarcerate that child. So just for a small fraction of that, we could finance this type of program, which really uplifts our community. I think that's all I want to say right now. I just want to say one last thing. I really appreciate Assemblywoman lifting up her personal story about her experience with her nephew. I think that's the reason why we all do what we do, is because, you know, this is not just some big policy issue. This is an issue that impacts communities of color, me, my family particularly, and all of our families. And I just think that's a really important thing, that this is something that it involves our Black brothers and sisters, communities of color, and that's the reason why it's a really important issue.
Yeah, I'm familiar with some of the workings of the New Jersey Institute of Social Justice. I think the last time I was at a hearing in Trenton, you know, the executive director, I hitched a ride back to Newark where my car was parked, you know, with him. So, but what is the Institute doing to work with the legislature, especially the Legislative Black Caucus, to make sure, again, that those assembly bills and Senate bills, when they are enacted into law and signed by the governor, is implemented, you know, by those persons that is supposed to affect it. And I know you work very closely with the New Jersey legislature, but if you could just tell our audience.
Yes, so yes, we work very closely with the legislator to pass these bills. I highlighted a few bills. There's some other as well. So we work with them to pass these bills, and I see our organization as being a voice for these communities. So we do reach out to the communities, and we talk to them, and we learn about the issues. And that's how we could advocate and meet with legislators to support these bills. One other thing too that I want to lift up is our involvement with mental health and particularly the Black community. And we're currently doing some research projects as to the costs of incarceration and also the costs on mental health within particular communities, with a view to using this research to bolster the pilot bill that I mentioned earlier, when we're trying to set up the hubs within particular areas of the state. We've conducted numerous interviews with people and learned about their personal stories about how they were incarcerated, how it ruined their lives, how they did not receive particular mental health resources, how they were financially ruined by these very antiquated criminal justice policies in our state. And we're looking to mobilize those stories and to put legs onto those stories, so that way they could be used to transform the systems that we have in this state. I actually just want to return to an earlier point I was talking about, is that public safety doesn't always have to draw on policing and prosecution. There's a lot of models throughout this country of how we can have mental health first responders, or we can have community-based responders that respond to these to mental health crises or different things like that without getting police involved. So that's part of the work that we're doing, talking to the community on the ground. And in addition to doing the policing reform, we're trying to expand public safety to something that starts with us and doesn't necessarily end in the courtroom or in prison.
Yeah, I teach a community policing course at Essex County College, and one of the quotes in the book is that the police is the community, and the community is the police. And we understand that the only way that you can have an effective police department is have the community get involved, and to get involved on a regular basis with police. The police should know the community, and the community definitely should know those persons who are responsible for public safety in their community. Brother Ship, how are you?
Good. Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, okay. If you could give us a little presentation of yourself and talk about reformations that you hope to see go forward in reference to policing.
Well, first and foremost, let me congratulate you and NJBIC for putting together this great group of panelists. The Assemblywoman is second to none with her tenacity to make sure that justice is meted out fairly to all communities. And I haven't had the opportunity to work yet with Mr. Wood, but I look forward to. But I've done an extensive amount of work with the New Jersey Institute of Social Justice, and I commend him for taking on the challenge. Obviously, you, Professor Smith, we've been working on these issues for at least the last 30 years, and we've made some progress, but we still have a ways to go. Just by virtue of the fact that we are actually now still talking about a chokehold bill. Why are we at an impediment with such a heinous type of police practice? As you said earlier, I'm a former instructor at the Police Academy. I currently serve now as a commissioner with the New Jersey Police Training Commission. And this is something that we don't even teach police to do. So why are we at a crossroads? We're trying to get legislation like that enacted. I'm quite vexed, quite frankly, to see that we're still at this particular point, number one. Number two, we're still talking about having police at polling places. The Assemblywoman that's with us today worked on that bill vigorously, and we got it through the Assembly. And then to have it get stopped at the Senate level by a Democratic senator to me is another frustrating thing to have to deal with. You know, all of us on this call right here, all of us on the Zoom right now, we know why not having police officers at the polling place are a good thing, because we all know about Birmingham. We all know about Selma, but there's so many other people who are in the legislature and in the police agencies that don't share that same experience that we share. So I understand that, but that's one of the things we need to do. Philadelphia Police, Chuck Ramsey, who is icon in police, considered to be icon in policing around the United States, he identified that that was a problem, because we're talking about now, we can talk about training, but when we talk about training, we also have to talk about culture. All right. So when we talk about culture, all right, one of the things that he did that we need to replicate here in this state, all of the recruits now that go through police training in Philadelphia, they have to first go to the Holocaust Museum and to the African American Museum while they're in the academy down in Washington, D.C., to get an understanding and a history of what people have gone through who currently reside in this country now. And he said they came back changed. So we have to educate people and let them know what our shared experiences are like, in hopes that they would make better decisions. Another thing that I wanted to talk about, which you had alluded to also, Professor Smith, is the Pelian principles. Sir Robert Peel, who's considered the father of modern day policing, he said the people are the community are the police, and the police are the community. So until we get back to, and I'm for the sake of the conversation, I am a certified community policing practitioner for the Department of Justice. I've worked in St. Louis after the Mike Brown shooting. I'm currently working in Illinois for the DOJ and IACP with other police departments. Until we bring the community into the process at every level, you know, even at the selection of police officers, the community needs to be involved in that process. When the policies are being developed, the community needs to be in that process. If we talk about disciplinary matters, like the CCRBs, the community needs to be involved in that process. Because what I'm afraid of, I used to say, we don't want to lose the trust of the community. But I can tell you right now, we've lost the trust of the community. And we have to do everything that we can do to regain that trust and be again looked at as legitimate entities. Because if we don't, communities are going to become less safe. And unfortunately, law enforcement leaders' jobs are going to be more difficult. We cannot continue to operate in two separate silos. We have to work together on these issues to maximize our efforts in creating public safety. And let me just give you 3 quick reasons why. One, law enforcement, we cannot put a police officer on every street. So we need the community. Law enforcement cannot make cases to present to juries unless the community participates and commits themselves to working with us, because that's who have to testify as witnesses. And number 3, if we want just verdicts, and I'm sure everybody does, because at the end of the day, our main goal should be public safety. If we want just verdicts, where do we get the people from that sit on the jury? They come from the community. And if they don't trust the police, they're not going to turn a just verdict. And as an example, no matter how you come down on the O.J. Simpson trial, there were some people in that jury that people say made a decision based on the way their experiences were with law enforcement. So it's critically important that we work on these issues together. We cannot do it in 2 separate silos. And I'll just yield now for the sake of conversation, and we're more than glad to handle any other questions that come before us.
For the 3 of you, when I was the president of the Newark branch of the NAACP, and Ron Rice Jr. was a city council member in Newark, and he was in charge. He was the committee person for law enforcement. He held a hearing to talk about implementing the CCRB. My question to the 3 of you: is it possible to lessen the objectivity to a CCRB if we change the name? No one likes a complaint to be made against them. When you say Civilian Complaint Review Board, that means that someone has a concern with something that you have done or said or did to, more specifically to them. So would it be more palatable to law enforcement persons in the state of New Jersey if we change the name to make it an advocacy unit, citizen advocacy unit instead of a citizen complaint review board? Well, what are your thoughts? Because I know that when the police unions in the state of New Jersey come before the New Jersey legislature, they are the first one objecting to, a CCRB. Yeah, and as we know, their main complaint is citizens don't understand what we do. That's their hearing cry. Well, how could they make judgments in reference to the actions that we take when they don't know what we do? So, Assemblywoman, when they come to you with the we don't want a civilian complaint review board in our city, what are some of your responses from you and the legislature?
I think we have to be sensitive to the conversation, but at the same time, I can't help but to think when you start to change the name, there becomes this other passiveness that happens. And so I think about, we're having the conversation about changing the name of reparations task force. We should change it to something else so that it doesn't seem as it's for its intentionality. And so I think we have to be I think by limiting the name to CCRB, I think that should be a soft for it. When you get a traffic ticket and you have to go to court, we don't call it something else. You still go to court. If you have disciplinary hearings, you still go to the disciplinary hearings. There is no other softer name. So I just think, we have to be very conscious about what we're doing when we start trying to change names and changing the concept or what we're actually doing. So those are just my immediate thoughts around that. And so I don't want to sweep this under the rug. And so I think we have to be very mindful and deliberate about what we're trying to do here. And I think the soft version is CCRB.
Okay, thank you very much. How about you, Ronnie? Well, what are your thoughts in reference to softening the adage when we talk about making a complaint against someone?
Was that to me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's a good question. I guess I need to look at the bill a little more closely to see whether the individual municipality actually needs to use the name CCRB. I'm not sure if that's something that's mandated that actually has to be called the CCRB as opposed to something else. I know other states use different terms for it. But I think there was a famous like Shakespeare quote or something like that about like, does a rose smell just as sweet if it's by any other name? You know what I mean? So like, really, it's the substance that I think matters, right? And I think that there is always going to be some subset of the population that's going to disagree with the substance. But I think largely, and I think we can all agree here, like the people who are actually being policed are the community. So we do need community involvement in making sure that police are held accountable, because we've seen time and time again that internal affairs bureaus or the actual in-house police of the police do not necessarily hold police accountable. So we do need that the civilians, the community to actually be involved in that. So I guess I'm not necessarily taking a position about a change in the name. I think that people are still going to be some people are still going to be a little bit leery about it, regardless of what it's being called. But I think the people who really matter are the community members, are the people, and I think that they support this bill, and I'm happy to see it, the interest that's in the CCRB bill.
Thank you. What about you, Brother Ship?
Well, John, you know, as you know, we've been working on these issues for years. Now, nationally, it's accepted as an oversight review board. Boards of education have oversight.
Sure.
Okay. Municipal government have oversight. City council. Okay. The banking industry, the medical industry, everybody else has oversight. And I know this is not popular in the police community, but one thing about Noble, we believe in speaking truth to power, and we believe in a holistic approach, and not just because it's a vision or thought of ours, because there's empirical data to support it. When community and police partnerships are high, crime rates are low, and it's a direct correlation there. So at the end of the day, you know, I don't like to get caught up on all these semantics. You know, it's nationally recognized by the National Association of Civilian Oversight, has accepted that name. So, you know, the bottom line is that we need oversight, okay? And we police at the consent of the community, okay? So why shouldn't the community have some say in the way they're policed? And let me tell you this also, in certain communities, you can't go up to their leadership in those communities and tell them how you're gonna police them. This philosophy only works in certain communities. In most cases, it's underserved communities. You go to Alpine, you're not going to tell them the way you're going to police them. Okay, so let's be cognizant. Let's be straightforward, and let's keep it real and talk what we really want to talk about. And those people who impede the progress as a community, we have to get our delegates together, our constituents together, and vote them out of office. And I'll just leave it at that, because you know, everyone pays taxes, and we deserve to be treated fairly and equitably with the administration of justice. And if we suggest that this is a way for it to happen, then we need to go in that direction. And I don't mean to sound kind of frustrated about it, but I am, because you know we're talking about this time in and time out, and you know, communities are being hurt. I get too many calls from mothers. And too many conversations with mothers who are literally afraid for their children to go out because they're worried about the next interaction with law enforcement. As a professional in law enforcement, I'm ashamed of that, you know, and whatever we can do to right that, we need to go in that direction. If this is going to help us, this was recommended by the 21st Century on Policing Task Force. This is looking there. It's in pillar number 2. Okay. And at that task force meeting, you had the IACP, International Chiefs of Police Association. You had Noble participate in it. You had communities participate in it. You had unions participate in it. And all of those groups were at the table together. You had academia there. You had DOJ there. And all of those communities said, all of those recommendations combined, all of that intellect was at the table. They said, this is the direction we need to go. So why is New Jersey stopping it? Thank you.
Okay, you mentioned.
And I think you also,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think we also have to recognize, as you said, there is oversight for everything. Whether we're talking about banking, there's regulatory oversight. Whether we're talking about cutting your grass and electrical and agriculture, there's oversight for everything. So I think we just have to be mindful that there is a space for community policing, and there is a space for oversight here. We know that, you know, nobody wants to live where there is no law enforcement. We want to feel protected in our communities, but we also don't want to be trampled upon as though we're just some type of cattle. And so I think that's where we're trying to find the balance at. And so when we start to talk about, you know, the cultural treatment and how law enforcement, this is the first time, my Giles, that I heard about going to the Holocaust Center and going to the African American Museum to understand what we talk about when we say, you know, we've been going through this for 400 years, and there are still people that feel it every single day. And we can't walk in a black man's shoes, and you walk in as a white man into the store and we get treated totally different. and who knows, he might be the driver. It's these type of things that we talk about, and it happens all the time. And it's sad because when it's out there, you can't take it back. And so I think when we start talking about law enforcement and training and how do we change the narrative and how do we heal our communities, there is a place. And I think part of it is recognizing when we have those bad apples, and how do we say we don't want that bad apple to spoil the whole bunch in this town or the next town. And so we're looking for some universal, holistic approaches to this. So thank you, Giles, for educating me about the name change and all the different aspects out there. But I think overall, to your point, there is a need for oversight, and I think it should be independent. It's like you having a treasurer that's also doing your auditing. It doesn't make sense. You can't do both at the same time. So you need that divide in there. So that was my comment to it. So thank you so
And John,
much.
just very, very, very quickly too. Nobody said that law enforcement couldn't be a part of this panel. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, if you want to, and I think you should, have law enforcement also as part of this board of professionals who are going to look at these things in an unbiased way and make a rational decision and make that recommendation to that respective hiring authority, be it the chief of police or the director.
Yes, our executive director, Rhea Foster, has mandated us to do, a quarterly webinar or a seminar in reference to different issues. And probably in a couple of months, we're gonna probably doing something, another presentation on the criminal justice system. So, I hope that you guys will make some time to come back, Veronica and Assemblywoman, to talk to New Jersey in a couple of months again. This has really been informative. It's been enlightening, and Ship mentioned a few minutes ago about if those elected officials are not effective, vote them out. I just hope that we have an election coming up. New Jersey BIC does not endorse as an organization, but we do vote, and we hope that
And you do calls of action as well. And before we wrap up, I gotta throw out, because we have a call to action here. We lifted up two very pieces of important legislation that we need your help on, and that is the limiting law enforcement piece. That's S-2923. That's in the Senate side. We need you to contact all of your senators and ask them to support this bill, because we need to finish it. We're still here, and it hasn't been done. The second one that we need your help on is the Youth Restorative Transformation bill. That is A-4663, and the Senate version is S-2924. So this is our call to action today. We just didn't come up here to have a discussion. We need your help in getting these things done. That's going to help our Black and Brown communities.
Yes, and we will definitely be participating. And okay, we have about 10 minutes left. I can't begin to thank all of you experts on things in the state of New Jersey, and the expertise that the Assemblywoman has shown as being on top of things in the New Jersey legislature, and the president of Northern New Jersey, Noble, and Yannick Wood from the New Jersey Institute of Social Justice. So, Assemblywoman, if we could start with you and closing statements, and please, take as much time as you.
I just want to thank you to NJBIC for hosting this webinar today. Thank you for the panelists, Mr. Woods and Mr. Ship, being on the call and really, you know, this is a team effort. And even NJBIC, you know, Miss Reva, she calls, we show up and we show out. And so, and this is us as a community. This is what we do. And I tell people all the time that we're not just out here advocating for whatever comes across our plate. We're advocating for issues that you bring to us. And these are real life issues that we have been fighting for a very long time. And I feel like this is the time that we need to be able to speak boldly, act boldly, and show out. And so, as you said, we have an election that's coming up. It's a state election. It's a primary on June the 8th. We need to make sure that we show out just as we did in the presidential, because they watch these numbers. They look at the aggregates. You got to watch the polling places. This is the time now where they may be trying to move them to different locations. This is the time to say, okay, now that we're not in COVID anymore, you know, is my polling place in the same place? You need to verify that. You need to check and see, am I still on the rolls? If you moved in the, you know, in the last 6 months, make sure that you're still there, or update your information. We still have time for voter registration, but it's up to us. Nobody is going to do the work for us. And so I thank each and every one of you for reaching out and being supportive to NJBIC, but the work isn't over. So we can't be tired, because we still have a lot more to do. We just have more topics to talk about, and I feel like we can just talk about them more freely, more boldly, and let's just uplift everyone, because in this space, we can all win, and we are winners. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so very much, Assemblywoman, and we truly enjoyed your presentation, and we hope that you are successful. As a voter, I hope that you are successful, even though, you know, I have the wonderful, outstanding Cleopatra Tucker, you know, as my Assemblywoman, you know, and but I think that, you know, don't tell her, but you know, if you could be her partner, you know, that would be a double goodness for the 28th legislative district. Brother Wood, closing statement, please.
Yes, thank you, NJBIC. Thank you, all the panelists, for this time, this conversation, to talk about these very, very important issues. You know, I'm just thinking, the worst possible feeling that I've had was when I would run for the bus, right? And I'd see the bus moving and leaving, or I run for the train and the train has left the station. I feel like that's kind of where the situation that we're in right now. There's a critical moment that New Jersey is in right now because of George Floyd, his gruesome murder, just this national racial reckoning right now. And this is unprecedented that people of all colors are coalescing and talking about these very, very important issues. So I don't want us to miss the moment. I don't want us to miss the train. I want us to make sure that we get aboard. So we all uplifted a lot of bills right now. We mentioned the CCRB bill. We talked about, I talked about qualified immunity. I talked about transparency. I talked about chokehold bills. The Assemblywoman and I both spoke about the transformative and restorative justice bill that's going to be helping children. These are all very, very important bills right now. And we definitely need to act. We definitely need to call our respective assembly members, our senators, and tell them how we feel about this. Because in this moment right now, they're very sensitive to these types of issues right now, and there is opposition. There is the tendency to be complacent about these issues, and that's why I really encourage everybody who's listening to this this video call to actually act, because we don't want to miss this moment. We don't want to miss the train, because what's going to be said about us, you know, a generation later, like we were this close, but we didn't get it. I don't believe that's going to happen. I think we're going to make this work. So just thank you so much for this time, and I'm very encouraged and energized by this conversation. I think we're going to make the right decision. We're going to support these very important bills for our community.
Thank you so much. Thank you so very much.
Yeah,
Brother Ship.
yeah. I'd just like to first of all, thank BIC, New Jersey BIC, for having this important legislative day event. One thing that we also have to remember, we talked a little bit about training. All right. The Police Training Act is under review now. It's New Jersey statute annotated 52-17B-66. Go look at it. All right. I put it up in the chat box also. Go to that, look at that, see what's in there that is advantageous to policing in all communities with a special emphasis on our community. Also look at it as with respect to the training that's going to be provided for law enforcement recruits. All right. Go through it thoroughly. Noble will sit down with you and go through that line by line. It's that important and that critical because we know once it becomes law, okay, it's much more difficult to bring about the necessary change needed. And also, I just wanted to say too, is that, you know, I can't thank many of our legislators enough because I had the pleasure and the privilege of working with people like the Assemblywoman here and other Assembly members. And I can tell you, we have some fierce fighters and they're all fighting for the right thing. But in addition to that, we need to be there to support them. All right. We need to be there to support them. I don't care if it's in an open hearing or if it's virtual. We need to be at those hearings. We need to be supporting their positions. We just can't become emotional about it and talk to each other. We have to take those emotions and turn them into action. And we must do that. There is no medium. Trust me, I've been in a number of hearings, testified at a number of hearings, and the squeaky wheel is the one that gets the oil. And if you're not allowed, and also meet with the policymakers, meet with them, the Attorney General, all right, request those meetings with them, meet with your speaker, all right, let him know how you feel about these particular issues in the Assembly, and meet with your Senate President, let them know how you feel about these particular issues. Then you'll see we start to gain more traction. And when we gain more traction, we begin to move things forward. So again, you know, thank you, you know, for having this wonderful legislative hearing. And let's take this moment and turn it into a movement. Thank you.
Okay, we haven't been shut off yet by the best producer in the United States, Allison, yet. So, Assemblywoman, I know that your phone gets and your staff get inundated with calls in reference to filling the Superior Court judge vacancies in the state of New Jersey. Now that some of the restrictions are going to be lifted probably soon in reference to in-person court appearances. What is the New Jersey legislature doing to fill those vacancies, those many vacancies in superior courts in the state of New Jersey?
You know, we had the hearing, the budget hearing recently with the judiciary, and they recognize there is a lot of vacancies that are opening. In addition to, you know, our backlog that we had currently existing. So the push is definitely out there. We're, of course, asking for diversity and inclusion. And one of my favorite quotes is that diversity and inclusion is inviting me to the party, but also asking me to dance. And I think that's by Miss Vera. But you know, we need to make sure that it does have representation of us. But we need them. They recognize this. They said they have it. They have the budget. Also, probably one of the largest in the state to be able to hire and to be able to manage this caseload. So we know that it's something that is coming very, very soon. So we did have those discussions recently.
Thank you. And Brother Wood, I know that your office phones have been inundated with calls in reference to Edna Mahan. Has your office been involved in the happenings at Edna Mahan at all? Are you involved at all?
I'm not personally involved in that, so I can't speak to those issues.
Okay. How about you, as Assemblywoman, in reference to what is happening at the women's prison in the state of New Jersey?
Well, I did watch the hearings, and we did have Commissioner Hicks come on to be able to go over his budget as well. We're looking for some immediate change. You know, again, part of the closure. The good thing that we did in New Jersey is that we have bail reform, so we don't have as many people in these facilities any longer. But you have to think about the overall of having people in these facilities. And so, public safety is one of them. And so whether you're an officer or you're an inmate, it definitely makes a difference. And so the plan that was outlined, we're looking to see how we're going to make some of these benchmarks. But we know we're under this strict mandate to do upgrades, and some of them have been done. A lot of changes have been made, but it's almost like it's the afterthought. And so the horrific conditions that people went through is just horrifying. And so how do we make that better moving forward? It's not to me, let's be more preventative about before you get there, and make sure when you do come home that there are services out there available for you. But I think we also have to think about the overall law enforcement in corrections. I think if we look at it from a job development perspective, how do we engage those people to say, listen, this industry is changing and we need you to change with it? And so if there are some skills that can go along with it, whether we're talking about security, if we're talking about other sheriff departments, or we're talking about bailiffs in the courts, if we're talking about online security, like there's so many other things careers that you can transition to in law enforcement. And so I think we should be taking a more proactive approach about it instead of being reactive. And so I know as a legislator, I'm not looking to build any new jails, especially not juvenile ones. So how do we make sure that we are protecting the children, the inmates, but also those that are employed there? And for me, I come from a job development aspect, so I can't help but to think, how are we helping them transition to something better, or besides making the personal decisions of this is my career is like the coal miners who is just literally going away in front of me, but how do we transition to something else? And I think we can do a better job of that. And this is some of the stuff that I talked about to the commissioner about in terms of human resources and job development for them. So we have to see where we can go, but this is the way the market is right now. There is so many opportunities that we can do in the Department of Labor to help them in even developing professionals to another skill set that they can add to be a better officer, no matter where you serve.
If I may too, Professor
okay, we're being 30 seconds, Brother Ship.
very quick. We have to be very careful too of who we're choosing to put in certain professions. All right, that's where it starts at, and we have to understand what your responsibility is. I served 9 months in working in Rahway State Prison. I want to clarify that. Served 9 months in Rahway State Prison before I became an Edison police officer. And I can tell you this: the job of a corrections officer is the care and custody of those who are incarcerated. All right. It's the care and custody of those who are incarcerated. And we cannot ever let anybody forget that, because that's a different philosophy from policing. It is two totally different professions. And if you don't want to be concerned about the people that are incarcerated, you don't want to care for them, you don't want to make sure they're in a secure place, then you're in the wrong profession. So we gotta stay cognizant of that as well.
Okay, we're gonna let that be the last word. Assemblywoman Reynolds Jackson, Yannick Wood, Giles Ship, I can't begin to thank you enough for your expert presentation and presenting and giving information to the entire state of New Jersey. This will be rebroadcast on the 20th of this month, which is our annual legislative day. Again, on behalf of the entire board, our chair, Reva Foster from Willingboro Township, thank you for presenting to us and being with us. And I look forward to having you back to talk to the state of New Jersey about the criminal justice system. So thank you very much and have a great day, and stay healthy, please.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.